Hey everyone, it's Chrysanthi from Happy Habitats, California. And today we are going to be learning what every living thing needs to survive. The materials you will need for this lesson are the What Are Basic Needs worksheet and something to write with. It is very important to understand that the reason living things can survive in their habitat is because their basic needs are met. Not everything that a person has is a need. There are some things that people don't need to survive, but they're still nice to have. A need is something that is necessary for survival. If an organism doesn't have one of its needs met, it will have a very hard time surviving. A want is something that is not necessary for survival. These are just extras that might be nice to have, but organisms can survive without them. I am going to create a T-chart so that we can look at the differences between wants and needs. So let's brainstorm something that people need. I know that we all need to eat 3 meals a day: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So in the needs column, I am going to write food. Food gives us the energy we need to go about our day. We know that food is a need, but what might be a want? I am going to write down candy as a want. I'm going to try to line these up right here. We need food to survive, but candy and other sweet treats are just wants that we have. Let's think of another need. It is really important that we drink a lot of water throughout the day. Water helps our bodies function like they're supposed to. So I am going to write down water as one of our needs. Having enough water to drink is a need, but what might be a want that sort of goes along with water, just the same way that candy sort of related to food? I'm going to say something like soda. Might be a want, something that we like to have, but we don't really need to survive. We need water to survive, but we don't really need soda. Let's think of some other needs that people have. Having a home or shelter is a need that people have. We need a home so that we can stay safe and have a place to eat and sleep. I am going to write a home as a need. And I'm also going to just add in shelter in parentheses, because shelter is sort of like the overall category and home is the specific type of shelter that we need. It's really important to have a home, but do you know what is not a need? Having our own bedroom. It is nice to have, but it's not really necessary for us to survive. So I'm going to write down own bedroom in the wants column. All right, we're making a lot of progress here. So what's another need that people have? People need to have room to exercise or play. It is important to stay active so that we can stay healthy. If we didn't have enough space to exercise or play, we might have a harder time surviving. So I'm going to write down over here in our needs column, exercise/play. And then I'm also going to write space in parentheses, because space is the overall need that we have, and we sort of attain that need, get our need met by exercising or playing. So what's a want that's sort of similar to needing space? I'm going to write down video games as a want. That sort of has to do with our exercise play category. Although playing video games is a type of playing, it's not really necessary to survive. Video games might be fun to have, but they do not help us survive. Now, the last thing that I'm going to put in our needs category is air. Although this may seem sort of obvious, and it is, we need air to survive, you're going to see that it's not actually one of our 4 basic needs because it is, in a way, so obvious. But it is a need, and if we didn't have air, we would not be able to breathe. And since there isn't really a want that goes along with air, I'm just going to leave it blank here. So we have our needs are food, water, home, which is a type of shelter, and to exercise and play, which is space, along with air. And our wants are candy, soda, an own bedroom, and video games. Now that we've shown the basic needs of a person, let's look at what those mean for different animals and plants. Remember, the 4 basic needs that all creatures have are food, water, shelter, and space. We are going to go through the 4 basic needs and give examples of what those needs look like to different creatures. First, let's look at food. What does a seal eat? It eats fish. What does a zebra eat? It eats grass. What does a rose eat? It gets energy from the sun and nutrients from the soil. Next, let's look at water. How does a dolphin drink? It gets water from the food it eats. How does an elephant drink? It finds a lake or pond and uses its trunk to get water into its mouth. How does a pine tree drink? It uses its roots to take in water that's in the ground. What type of shelter do different organisms have? What shelter does a shark have? Sharks don't build homes, but some lay their eggs around rocks to keep them safe. These crazy-looking things are shark eggs. Otherwise, they keep swimming around in the ocean, which is their shelter. What shelter does a beaver have? Beavers make dams for protection and to raise their young. What shelter does a daisy have? Plants don't really have shelters, but daisies grow in grass and soil around other daisies. Here, they get everything they need to survive. Lastly, let's look at what having space means to different living things. What space does a whale have? Whales can swim in the whole ocean and have room to find a mate and raise their young. What space does a lion have? Lions live on the African savanna, where there is plenty of space for them to find food and play. What space does an oak tree have? Trees don't need to exercise or play, but they do need space to spread their roots and grow. Now that we have some examples of the different basic needs all living things need to survive, let's pull out our What Are Basic Needs worksheet. It looks just like this. On the top, it says, all ecosystems have sunlight and air to provide life to organisms. Other basic needs that organisms require are food, water, shelter, and space. Give examples of how the following organisms find basic needs in their ecosystem. So this column going down has all the different organisms. We have you, which is a person, dog, sunflower, and a fox. And on this side, we have food, water, shelter, and space. And at the end, we're going to answer these 2 questions. So, the first organism is you. What is an example of food you need to survive? Remember, this isn't just a food you want, but it's a food you need. I am going to write vegetables right there, because vegetables are healthy and they help me get the nutrients I need to survive. Make sure that you're doing this worksheet with me and following along. If you want to write another healthy food or food group that helps you get the nutrients you need, you can write that in too. Next, what is a way that you get water? I get water from my, let me write it in right here, water bottle. So I know that my water bottle doesn't just fill up water on its own, and that I fill my water bottle from the sink. If you get your water a different way, you can write that in here. Next is shelter. What type of shelter do you live in? I live in a house, so I am going to write house right there, and you can do the same. Last for us, you, is space. What type of space do you have that helps you survive? I'm going to write in sports field as my sort of like example of space, because that is where I like to play and exercise. If you play or exercise somewhere else, you can write that in here. So the second organism that we are going to be looking at is a dog. What type of food does a dog need? I think this one is pretty simple. A dog eats dog food. Now, where does a dog get its water? Dogs usually drink water out of a water bowl. So together, let's just write in water bowl right here. All right, so our next basic need is shelter. So what type of shelter does a dog have? Lots of dogs live inside with their owners. So I'm going to put house as the shelter that a dog has. Same shelter that a human has too. If your dog or the dog of someone you know has a dog house instead of living in the house with their owners, you can go ahead and write that there instead. So the last basic need that we need to fill for a dog is space. So what type of space does a dog need? Dogs have lots of energy and need a lot of room to play and exercise. Lots of dogs need a yard to exercise or play in. So I'm going to go ahead and write yard. So it looks like we are about halfway done. Looks like we're about halfway done with our chart here. So we are just going to keep moving on. The next organism we're going to look at is a sunflower. Because a sunflower is not an animal, examples of its basic needs will look a little different from our other organisms. So this one might require a little more thought. But first, how does a sunflower get its food? Although all organisms need the sun, like it said up here, sunflowers get their energy and food from the sun. They also need nutrients from the soil. So I'm going to write in two different things here. The first thing I'm going to write is the sun. Because instead of eating things, sunflowers can actually absorb in or take in energy from the sun and use it for energy. But I'm also going to write nutrients from the soil. Just going to fit that to my size over here, because that is another example of food that a sunflower gets. Next, how does a sunflower get water? Sunflowers can't drink water, like other things. They actually sort of like take it in a different way. They take in water from their roots. So that's the part of the sunflower that's underground, and that's how they get their water. So I'm going to write roots in here. Sunflowers don't really have a mouth that they can drink out of. All right, moving on is shelter. Sunflower shelter doesn't really look like the shelter of other organisms. Sunflowers don't really have shelter over their heads like you might or the dog does. But sunflowers do live in soil. And the soil is sort of like their house. It's where they live, and they're able to grow around other sunflowers and grasses. So I'm going to say that soil is the shelter that a sunflower lives in. Last, what type of space does a sunflower need? Sunflowers don't really move around, but they do need space to spread their roots. Remember that roots are how sunflowers get their water, spread their roots, and it's also what keeps them in the ground. So like if a big storm of wind came, if the sunflower has its roots in the ground, it's not going to fall over. If sunflowers are too close together also, they won't be able to get water or grow properly. So we are on our last organism, which is the fox. So what kind of food does a fox eat? Let's think about that. Foxes eat lots of different foods, but I'm going to list two that I know that a lot of different foxes eat. I'm going to list rabbits as my first one. My second one is going to be birds. It's sort of funny. They eat these two different organisms. If you know of another food that a fox eats, you can put that, but I think these are two really good examples. Now, how does a fox get water? Foxes drink fresh water, just like people, from where they can find it. So they don't really have a sink that they can fill up their water bottle from. So I'm going to go ahead and write puddle is where a fox gets water. Gets water from a lot of different places, but I think puddle is just a fun example of where a fox might get water. And if it can't find any other water, in like a stream or something, it's going to have to use a puddle. So next is shelter. What's the shelter that a fox lives in? Foxes will dig underground and build dens to raise their young. So I'm going to write den right here, den, as the type of shelter for a fox. So the last box that we need to fill in for our chart is space. Foxes live in lots of different places, so I'm just going to write the wild for the space of a fox. Some foxes will live in like forests, others might live around where people live, so there's not really a specific place that all foxes sort of live in, so I'm just going to write the wild. And also, foxes don't really have special places they go to find food, so overall, their space is the wild. Awesome job! So we're almost done. We filled out all of our boxes and it looks great. But the last thing we need to do is answer these questions here at the bottom. So let's read these together. The first one asks, a farmer accidentally destroyed a fox's den when he plowed the land to make a new farm field. How could the fox adapt to survive? So we already know that a den is where a fox lives. It's the type of shelter that a fox has. So without a den, the fox doesn't have shelter. So how could the fox adapt to survive without shelter? They still need shelter, so they might have to find a different shelter because their den got destroyed. So let's write, I'm going to start my line all the way over here, make it the right size. I'm going to write the fox could adapt by digging a new den or finding shelter in a hollow log. I'm also going to change the spacing on this just so it looks a little bit more like yours. So a fox could either, oh, I said diffing, not digging. Oh, goodness. My mistake. So the fox could definitely dig a new den if it had the space for, but also foxes are really good at adapting, so they can find shelter in pretty much anything. So a hollow log would make a perfect shelter. Let's move on to the next question. It asks, what if an organism is unable to adapt or find basic needs within its ecosystem? So after the fox's den got destroyed, it was able to make a new den or find shelter somewhere else. But let's just say it couldn't. And let's say any of these organisms couldn't get their basic needs. What happens then? I am going to write, if an organism can't adapt or find its basic needs, it won't survive. Oh, I used the wrong type of its. So it's important to know that if an organism can't get its basic needs, it's not going to survive. An organism needs to have all of its basic needs met in order to do well where it lives. Looks like we finished our worksheet. Awesome job! Thank you for learning all about organisms' 4 basic needs with me. I can't wait to see you next time and keep learning with you.